Hey there, it's Lara here with your weekly astrology forecast. So this one's for the week of March 3rd to the 9th, 2021. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Happy to report we have heat. Our furnace is fixed, so that's good. If you saw last week, I was wearing my big hoodie and I was a little bit frazzled and scattered, and truthfully, I'm still a little bit frazzled and scattered. There's been a lot going on, but I did take a moment to try to get my act together here so that I could be a little less frazzled and scattered for you on the video than I was last week. I didn't get a chance last week to, I'll acknowledge, I didn't put the timestamp, so apologies for that, but hopefully I should be able to do that. And of course, if anybody watching ever wants to, take that on while you're watching, feel free. Thank you so much. I've had people in the past, sort of jump in and do that, and it's helpful. But if you can't or you don't want to, that's okay too. But I just appreciate you being here. All right, so the big thing we're going to talk about in this video is Mars moving into Gemini, which is happening tonight. So today is March 3rd, 2021, as I'm recording this. And so Mars is moving from this fixed Earth energy that it's been in, right, Taurus, for most of the beginning of 2021, and it's moving into the mutable air sign of Gemini. So that's a big shift, and we're going to talk about that. That's happening 10:30 tonight, which is Eastern time that I'm going by. So we're going to talk about that, and the potential effects of that and where that's moving through your personal chart and how you might feel that and how you might capitalize on that. And that's how we're going to spend most of our time today. But I do want to mention, as usual, a few other things that are going on this week that are relevant. So of course, I'll start with where the moon is at. That's what I always do, just to give you a heads up about that ebbing and flowing sort of energy, right? That's really, really, we are very much connected to as humans here on Earth. So it's good to keep track of where the moon is at and how that's feeling for you. And if you want a little bit of advice or assistance with that, you can go download my free guide to working with the moon over on my website. And the link to that is below. Excuse me. So we've got the moon in Scorpio today. The moon doesn't love being in Scorpio. It's a little uncomfortable there because, the moon is sensitive and emotional, and Scorpio is intense. So it's that combination of intense emotion, right? And so it's not really comfortable for a lot of folks. I have a moon in Scorpio natally, so I'm used to that kind of intensity. I was talking about that on Facebook yesterday, actually, and I know a lot of people responded, but I didn't get a chance. And I think I actually accidentally put that post on my personal page rather than on, my business page that I generally use for this, that I link to this video below. But a lot of people responded, so I'm interested to go back and have a look at what everybody said as far as that goes. But so it's that notion of emotional intensity we can be feeling, right, with the moon in Scorpio. Really digging deep, really, it's good for sort of investigating, for getting to the bottom of things. But it can also be a little bit touchy as well. All right, and then the moon is moving off into Sagittarius on Thursday, so a little bit more optimistic moon on Thursday, and then it will move into Capricorn on Saturday, and finally Aquarius on Tuesday, when it will enter the last quarter square phase, right? So before we have the next new moon, which will be in Pisces, we've had the full moon in Virgo, and now as the moon enters or moves through Aquarius, it will square. It will make a square. So it's this last quarter square phase of the moon, and it is a time when we need to kind of make some adjustments. We can have a bit of a crisis in consciousness, or like meaning like you know, whatever transpired at the full moon is starting to wane, right? At the last half of the cycle. And now it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do next? Or was that the right thing? Or what do I need to do moving forward? You know, that those sorts of things can happen at the court. It's a bit tense. It can be a bit tense anyways. All right. And then that's where the moon is at. And we also, I'm going to keep harping on this every week probably, because we need to remember that Saturn and Uranus are in a square, right? So they've moved out of like the exact, but they're still very close range. And Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus. And as we've said many times before, this is the defining signature of 2021. I did a video on it. You can go have a look back on my, on my YouTube channel. You'll find it pretty easily there, and it's relevant for the whole of 2021, and it will be reaching these peak points, right? So we've just kind of gone through the eye of the needle there once. But we're still feeling that energy very, very, very much. So I'm not going to harp on, I'm not going to go into the details of that because I've talked about it a lot before. So you can find out about that in the other video. And then, excuse me, sip of tea. We've got, there's a couple little tidbits. I won't spend too much time on. Venus in Pisces is sextile Uranus and Taurus today. And so a sextile is a supportive conversation, right? It's a conversation of sort of opportunity. And so there may be an opportunity that arises here, and it could be quite sudden because that's Uranus, right? But involving Venus themes of relationship, of love, beauty, resources, money, that which we desire, that kind of thing. So you can look for that possibility. And like I said, we've got Mars moving into Gemini today, so we're going to talk about that in detail very shortly. The other couple things I want to mention is that on the 4th, so tomorrow, Mercury in Aquarius right now is going to meet up with Jupiter, so conjunct Jupiter at 17 degrees of Aquarius. And so this is potentially a really nice aspect where we've got, this Mercury Jupiter combo can be like really optimistic kind of, or enthusiastic thinking, big ideas, good news potentially, or it could also be because Jupiter expands whatever it touches, right? So it could also be sort of big words, hubris, like arrogance, that kind of thing can also, that's just, a potential possibility. And we know that the potentials always run on a spectrum, right? So there's always sort of the lower kind of octave, and then the higher octave, the lower vibration, if you will, the higher vibration, the yin and yang, I don't know, you can use any combination of opposites. I hesitate to use good and bad because it's not really, I don't know that that's the way, in the way we think about things, I suppose good and bad would be appropriate words to use, but there's just more desirable kind of traits and less desirable kind of traits or possibilities, I guess, would be a way to word it. So, but generally Mercury conjunct Jupiter, maybe we can have some good news coming in and a bit of optimism. Okay. And the other thing, so in combination with that tomorrow, this Mercury is also trining, Mercury Jupiter is trining the North Node, right, in Gemini at 15 degrees, so within a couple of degrees. And so and we've also got the moon, who will be in Sagittarius at the time, opposing Mars, newly planted in Gemini. And we also have the sun in a square with the nodes of the moon as well. So let's put this all together and just, I'll give you kind of like a little snapshot of all of this energy and what it may sort of feel like. So there's something here, you know, about our past and our future that may be related to whatever's going on at this Mercury Jupiter conjunction, where we've been, where we're headed, what we need to release, and what we need to consume or integrate more. And when I say consume, but not in excess, right? Because the North Node, it can be associated with sort of like insatiability, if you will. And so there can be kind of like, you know, it can be a bit of the sort of the realm of the hungry ghost, so to speak. But you know, there's trines happening here. There's, as we said, trines are supportive, right? But there's also the square and opposition, and so those are a bit tense. So all that to say, it could feel a bit like a bit of a jumble of energy, a bit of a jumble of up and down, or, you know, good and bad, or tense and easy sort of thing, going on, you know, over the next couple of days, sort of thing. And then on March 7th, which happens to be my birthday, we have, because I'm a Pisces sun, we have asteroid Pallas moving into Pisces. And so I don't think I put it on the chart, the chart here, but I've been trying to keep things simple on the chart to show you. But Pallas is moving into Pisces, and so Pallas is associated with things like strategic thinking, creative problem solving. It's this sort of feminine warrior-like energy, right? Very clever. And so as Pallas moves into Pisces, she can bring those qualities to whatever house Pisces sits for us in the chart, right? Whatever's going on there. So that's something to note. And then we have another square to the nodes with Venus on March 9th. So Venus following the sun there, making a square to the nodes, and again bringing up that whole like past, future, you know, where we've been, where we're going, what we need to release, what we need to increase, kind of thing. So you know, that's just an ongoing theme. But what I really want to take the rest of the time to talk about today is this Mars in Gemini. I'm going to try to keep the video a little bit shorter than it has been, for your sake and mine. But and because, you know, like we're the focus of Mars and Gemini is a little bit more, there's not so many pieces to the puzzle that I need to bring in today, kind of thing. There are some though. All right, so Mars is moving into Gemini until April 23rd. So this energy beginning tonight will move us through to April 23rd when Mars moves out of Gemini. And so, we've got, let's talk about where Mars has been. Okay, so Mars, if you'll recall, was in Aries for a good long time in 2020. Mars moved through, which is, Aries is Mars's home sign, right? So Mars moved through Aries for about 6 months, through 2020, the last part of 2020, the last half, and into, it changed signs, I believe, if I recall correctly, it was like January 6th. So early in 2021, it moved into Taurus. But when Mars was in Gemini, it retrograded there. And so it spent an extra long time there, right? Instead of the usual sort of 6-7 weeks that Mars would spend in a sign, it spent 6 months there. And there was a lot going on at that time. So it was very, you know, that's an extra driven Mars, and an extra assertive Mars, an angry and warrior like Mars. But then Mars went retrograde, right? So it was really, Mars was really trying to draw our attention to certain things during that time. And we talked about that, you know, back in the day, back last year when Mars was moving through Gemini, or through Aries. So I'm not going to review that here, but, you know, Mars was particularly when it was moving forward in Gemini, really doing Mars things, because it's when you're at home in your comfort zone is when you are more sort of true to nature, I guess, right? True to your nature. So then Mars moved into Taurus at the beginning of January this year, and that was a major shift in energy, because Mars doesn't love being in Taurus. Mars wants to go, to get her done kind of thing. And Taurus likes to take it slow and easy, right? Taurus is fixed earth energy. Taurus is like tapping the brakes, and Mars is trying to, to move forward. So it's when Mars is in Taurus, it's like it can have this feeling of being a bit of a grind energy, right? And things maybe not moving as quickly as we'd like them to be. Some frustrations can be happening in terms of our will and what we want to go get, or what we want to do, or how we want to achieve, or just plain old move kind of thing. And so now that time of Mars and Taurus is coming to a close as of tonight, and Mars is moving into Gemini, where Mars is slightly more comfortable, because Gemini is quick and Mars prefers quick to slow. So let's sort of break this down a little bit, or dive a little deeper into this. So the other thing is, that I neglected to mention, but I think I should before I take this any further with the Mars and Gemini piece, is that when Mars was in Aries, Mars was squaring the energy, all that big energy that was in Capricorn, right? Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, whatever else moved through. And so there was this tense square happening between Mars and those other sort of heavy hitters for the whole last half of 2020. And then when Mars moved into Taurus, Mars was making, Mars made a square to Uranus, right? When Mars moved into Taurus, Mars made a conjunction to Uranus, also in Taurus, but also squared all those planets that are now in Aquarius. So Saturn and Jupiter moved out of Capricorn and moved into Aquarius. And then, we had Venus in Aquarius, Mercury in Aquarius, we had a stellium in Aquarius, right? And so Mars was squaring these planets in the other fixed sign. Taurus is a fixed sign, Aquarius is a fixed sign. So there's been a lot of tension with Mars going on all the last half of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. So now Mars is moving into Gemini. Gemini is a mutable earth sign. And so, a mutable air sign. Sorry about that. I told you I was a little bit frazzled and scattered, but Gemini is a mutable earth sign. Mutable air sign. Oh my gosh, why do I keep saying that? And so Mars is a little bit more comfortable with the quickness of Gemini, right? So, and now as Mars moves into Gemini and through Gemini, Mars only has to contend with, really, the in a sort of uncomfortable way, shall we say, with anything moving through the other mutable signs, which are Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo. Well, the thing is, there's not a whole lot going on, in terms of, we've got the nodes in Gemini and Sagittarius, and that's no small thing. We don't have much going on in Virgo, because we just had the full moon in Virgo, but we have a lot going on in Virgo's opposite sign of Pisces. And so there will be some stuff going on between Mars and, Mars in Gemini and then the Pisces part in the chart. But most of those planets have sort of moved further enough through Pisces that they're not going to get a real, Mars isn't necessarily going to catch up to square them, except for Mercury. So, excuse me. And that will happen on the 23rd. So Mars will exactly square Mercury in Pisces on the 23rd. But we'll talk about that more when we get there. And on that same day, the sun will be conjunct Venus in Aries. So we'll talk about that more then. But that's just something, that's kind of the one tricky spot, like the real tricky spot that Mars will be in as we move through this Mars and Gemini phase. And, there'll be contact with the nodes of the moon as well. And then, of course, on and off contact with the moon, because as the moon moves through, whenever it hits a mutable sign, then it will square Mars. Okay, so what is Mars? What does Mars signify in astrology? Mars is the planet that speaks to our will, our passion, our drive, our assertiveness, our aggression, our anger, our rage, our courage, our sense of competition. Mars can be force. It can be cutting. It can be warrior-like. And so, those are all the qualities. It's very yang energy, right? Very, very sort of forward-driven energy is Mars. And so that's the energy, the planetary energy we're dealing with. And then Mars is moving through the sign of Gemini, and which is home of Mercury. So it's like Mercury is hosting Mars at the time that Mars is moving through Gemini. Think of it like that, where Mercury is sort of like the owner of the house, right, of Gemini, and Mars is passing through, is visiting for a while. And so we have to factor that energy in. Gemini is, as I said, mutable air, right? So Gemini is things like quick intellect, very curious, social, information gathering. I always use the analogy of the hummingbird when I think of Gemini, who flits around from flower to flower, gathering nectar and spreading pollen. It's like that kind of energy. Gemini likes variety. Gemini is quick, very quick-witted. I don't know if I said that already. And ruled by Mercury, right? There's a lot going on up here with Gemini. A lot of conversation, and a lot of thinking, and a lot of information exchange, communication, that kind of thing, right? As I said, socializing, that sort of thing. And as we already mentioned, with the more, the optimal qualities, also on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have things that are maybe slightly less desirable. And so, Gemini can be prone to indecisiveness, to being scattered, like scattered attention, too many fingers and too many pies kind of thing. Superficiality. So it's kind of just like, being on the surface of things. Gossipy. Did you know this? Did you know that kind of thing? And that's not always with like ill intent. Sometimes it's just because Gemini's curious. Gemini likes to share information. They like to, have information. They like to know. They like to be in the know. But that can be a result of that, right? So this sort of scattered mental energy, or even like divided thinking, or things like well, I think this, but then there's a new piece of information, so maybe I think that, or maybe I think that, or I don't know, maybe this person's right, maybe that person's right, maybe this news article, all of that. And so it can just be, there can be a sense of sort of mental overwhelm that happens sometimes. But with Mars moving through Gemini until April 23rd, there's a opportunity here to have a lot of conversations, exchange of information, things like learning, writing, teaching, anything involving those mind qualities, right? Those mercurial qualities of Gemini, and Mercury, its ruler. There can be an opportunity to get a lot done, because Mars likes to take action. to be productive, to be fired up about something, and to be thinking and communicating and you know, fiddling, and it could involve technology potentially as well during this time, or like even, you know, Mercury things, Mercury rules like commerce and mobility and the little moving parts and all of that kind of thing too. So it could be anything like that as well that's going on. So just to kind of wrap that up a little bit, you know, in a tidier package, Mars in Gemini is quick acting, clever, strategic, versatile. You know, all of those things. Ingenuity is a word that comes to mind, but it could be lacking focus, right? We can be spinning our wheels a little. The risk is in being maybe too aggressive as well with our words and our communications. There's also a risk of being, like I said, sort of scattered, like scattering your energy, of mental restlessness, of taking on too many tasks, accepting too many invitations, that sort of thing, right? So that's the thing to be mindful of when Mars is moving through Gemini. But having said that, remember, Mars in Gemini is preferable to where, you know, Mars in Taurus, like me. And when I say preferable, like, I don't want people to think like, well, I have Mars in Taurus, what does that mean? No, I just mean that Mars is more comfortable in Gemini. It's just a little more aligned with what Mars wants to do. So Mars doesn't have to work so hard to get things done, right? It can blow off some steam in Gemini. All right, and so Mercury, let's just talk a little bit about this, because Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. And Mercury is in Aquarius right now at the time that I'm recording this, right? Mercury is going to move out of Aquarius on March 15th. So this, and it's going to move into Pisces, where it's not super comfortable. We say that Mercury is in its fall in Pisces. It's opposite Virgo, another sign that it rules, right? And so it doesn't really, Mercury has a harder time doing Mercury things when it's in Pisces. It is, Pisces is not sort of concrete enough for Mercury, if you will. But so at first, you know, that Mercury energy is going to feel one way, and then when it shifts into Pisces, it's going to bring a new flavor, and it's going to impact what Mars is doing, because Mercury is the host of Mars, right? So once Mercury enters Pisces, we're going to have this increased sort of tension between the rational, kind of analytical, factual kind of mind things, right? And which is what Mercury rules. And Mercury's in an air sign right now where it's a little more comfortable in Aquarius. And then it's going to move into Pisces. So we're going to have that juxtaposed with the intuitive, instinctual, sort of non-linear thinking, right? Which is Mercury in Pisces. And so that's going to change the way Mars operates a bit around mid-March. And I have some questions, I remember this time, for you to reflect on as you're thinking about this transit in your own chart, in your own life. And I worded them, or I organized them in such a way that, you know, it's like, okay, we'll have the Mercury in Aquarius piece, and then when Mercury moves into Pisces, let's add this layer, right? So that's the way I organized it. But before I get even to that, I want to show you the chart just briefly. Here's the chart. So there is, and that's for tonight, as I said, 10:30 Eastern time. Mars moves into Gemini. There's Mars at 0 degrees Gemini, right? Moved out of Taurus. And so, and then we have, of course, Jupiter, Mercury, Saturn up here. Jupiter and Mercury, like Mercury's getting ready to meet Jupiter. As I mentioned, that's happening tomorrow, exactly at 14 degrees. And we've got the sun here in Pisces with Venus and Neptune, which the sun's eventually going to meet up with Neptune. And of course, Uranus down here in Taurus, right? And squaring still. See, Uranus is at 7 degrees. Saturn is at 8 degrees. So they're still within a degree of each other. And there's the nodes, right? North node Gemini, south node Sagittarius. And we still, of course, I didn't mention this, but Pluto, we know Pluto's still hanging out there in Capricorn, doing Pluto things, right? Transforming and digging up the soil and composting things in that Capricorn area of our chart for a little while longer yet. So that's the chart. One thing that I didn't mention to you, I'm sort of focusing on the personal more so in this video, and Mars is a personal planet, so we tend to feel it a little bit more personally. But you know, we may see things out there in the world in terms of more maybe more aggressive communication or assertive communication, or more activity in terms of communication, like just more communication, quick, like, you know, lots of information when Mars is in Gemini. So, and then when Mercury moves into Pisces, that can get a little bit muddled, perhaps. So, I'm going to go through some questions that I came up with for you to reflect on, and you can write these down, or you can just, you know, think about them as I'm saying them, you know, or you can come back and listen to the video later and contemplate, what have you. I'll try to put a timestamp for where these are. So questions to reflect on, and then we'll take it through each sign, and we'll talk about, you know, where is Mars moving over this next little while for you, over this next, what are we today? So it will be close to 2 months, about what, 6 or 7 weeks, I guess. Mars moving through Gemini. And so, you know, that's firing up a particular house in your chart, and we're going to talk about that. But for now, here are the questions that I came up with for you. So, and these, you know, are combining all the factors of the Mars energy, Mars and Gemini, and the Mercury piece as well, and where Mercury's at, right? So here we go. What is my relationship to anger? So something to think about, right? I think that's a good question for all of us to be contemplating when we're thinking about Mars. How did I learn to process anger? You know, like where did I get my cues from? Maybe growing up, or just in society, or parental figures, or authority figures, or, you know, like what were the expectations, or what did I learn about anger, and how is that impacting me now? Do I need to be more or less assertive? You know, like, do I have a problem with aggression even? What resources can I seek out to help me deal with, or express, or relate to, or process my anger? How can I channel my anger, right? Like, what kinds of things can you do to channel your anger that are more constructive than destructive? Anger as a fuel for creativity is something that I've been working on personally over the course of this year. I'm not always great at it. You know, we've had conversations, and you see me writing about this on social media as well if you follow me there. You know, on Facebook and Instagram, and the links to that are below. But and sometimes I write about it on my blog when I write there. But you know, this has been an ongoing issue for me, and I'm getting real curious about it this year, and really learning a lot about that process. And so it's a work in progress, but you know, it's kind of like learning to channel that through creativity in some way. For me, a lot of times that's writing, but it can be any other kind of, you know, artistic form. It can be working with your hands. It can be exercise. It can be oh my goodness, screaming into your pillow kind of thing, like all of those kinds of things, right? But I'm not suggesting that you should shy away from expressing your anger, because I think that is not healthy. And it eventually comes out, and maybe not in the best, most appropriate ways, right? Okay, so, and another question for you. Is my anger masking other emotions that I'm not ready to deal with, right? Because oftentimes, I mean, there's this one Facebook meme that I recall seeing that I saved, and it's I think it says something like I sat with my anger long enough until she showed me her real name was grief or sadness, right? So there's a lot of times that our anger is masking other emotions because it feels safer, and it feels maybe more comfortable in some ways, right? It's more protective than having to really deal with the stuff that's we don't really want, that makes us feel very vulnerable. Excuse me, vulnerable perhaps. Okay, and so some more questions I have for you. How can I take concise action in the Gemini area of my chart? So whatever that relates to, which we're going to get to. Do I need to be more or less assertive here, specifically in relation to those life themes? And if so, how can I assert myself more, or how can I be less assertive? Like what can I do there to work on that? How can, and this is particularly while Mercury is in Aquarius still, how can innovative thinking or ideas help me in this area of life? And then once Mercury moves into Pisces on March 15th, you can sort of add these questions as well. But you can be pondering them anytime. How can I find a balance between the rational and the intuitive, right? Those are both intelligences, shall we say. So when Mars is in Gemini and Mercury's in Pisces, this is really ripe for emotional intelligence. And sometimes we don't give that we don't place enough value on that, right? And on our intuition. Sometimes we ignore our intuition to our detriment. So another question, how can I be actively curious about this area of my life? How can I sort of explore my options without maybe having to make a firm choice just yet? Just kind of exploring the options and getting a feel for what you could sort of do differently there. So those are all the questions I have for you. I mean, there's always more I could say, always. But we're going to go take it through the signs now. And so thinking about everything that I've said in the intro, please listen to the intro. If you just skip the intro and jump straight to your sign, it just, you don't have the context, really. But thinking about where Mars is moving through in your particular chart, and this is like these life themes are what Mars is firing up, right, between now and April 23rd. And I will say that the mutable signs of Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces may feel this maybe a bit more assertively in their charts, just because it's making oppositions and squares, right, to those placements in the mutable signs. And so thinking about the questions that I posed and filtering them through this lens of what house does Gemini sit for me. And so we're talking about whole sign houses when I'm doing these general forecasts. Of course, if you know your chart and you're using a different house system, Placidus is very popular, or another quadrant system. I use Porphyry, but I also more increasingly use whole sign. So any kind of other house system, and that's comfortable for you, and where your what house or houses Gemini sits for you, then have at her. But I'm using whole sign here, and I think when we're talking about planetary ingresses, whole sign if you pay attention to that, there's something to it, in my experience anyway. And then we're talking about, in a general forecast like this, looking at, first and foremost, your rising sign or your ascendant, if you know it, and also your sun sign and your moon sign for added pieces to the puzzle. And when you put those three together, you get a good sense of what's happening. But when we're talking about looking at the rising sign, this tends to be kind of like the real world events, you know what I mean, that go on in relation to the energy. The moon is more emotional, and the sun is more related to our sense of motivation and purpose, and how we shine out in the world. So, like I said, rising sign first, but also sun and moon will be helpful to listen to. So we're going to start, as I always have been doing since I started making these videos, with the first house, whatever sign the event is happening in the first house, and we'll take it through all 12 houses. So we're going to start in this case with Gemini. And so Gemini, you've got Mars moving through your sign until April 23rd, right? So this is firing you up in general because it's in your first house if you're a Gemini rising. But if you're a sun sign Gemini, it's moving through your sun sign. And it's like, it's firing you up. It's motivating you in some way. It's encouraging you to take action, to perhaps regarding something that has to do with your sense of self, with maybe relationship, because it's on that relationship axis, with your relationship to yourself, your physical vitality and well-being, how you project yourself out into the world, how the world perceives you, these kinds of themes, right? When Mars is moving through your sign or your first house. And so, you can feel a real sense of motivation here, or assertiveness, or maybe restlessness in relation to these themes as well, really wanting to take action and get things done, right? And so it's a good opportunity for that. And then, keeping in mind that the ruler of your sign, Mercury, is right now in Aquarius, fellow air sign. So that's supportive, but then soon to be moving into Pisces, where Mercury has a little more trouble with the clarity of thought, right? And so I guess my advice to you here when Mercury moves into Pisces is to just be mindful that you might not want to act too quickly on, like, things can seem like a good idea at the time. Let's just put it that way. And so, just be okay with tuning into your intuition, because, as Gemini, as a Mercury ruled sign, you can be all up in your head, and that's not a bad thing. Be okay with tuning into your intuition and what feels right to you as well. But know that you don't necessarily need to make a firm choice about things, but you can really explore your options, right? And feel into that as Mercury moves through Pisces, and as Mars moves through Gemini. But you can really take some real action. So let's give you a concrete example. Sometimes I forget to do that. My bad. So you could be starting some new health regimen or something like that, or doing something to care for your physical being and your physical body. And it might involve like exercise. Like you could and when Mars is moving through your sign, that could be like, maybe you're taking up, boxing or something like that, or a more active sport, or maybe, what else could that look like? Mars moving through your sign of Gemini, like, debates. It could be, getting, taking action on, just when it's in the first house, it could be just about anything, but like, maybe you're working on putting yourself out there in some new way, and you're taking a lot of action on that, like creating a new website or something like that, or actively trying to improve your appearance even in some way. With Mars moving through Gemini, it could be that as well. So those are just some examples. That's not, your experience is not necessarily limited to those things that I just said, but that gives you an idea, right? And those first house themes. And of course, putting all the pieces together, all the stuff I said in the intro. So that's for you, Gemini. We're going to move to Taurus now, where Mars is moving through your second house. So this is you getting fired up, taking some action, being perhaps more assertive in terms of your personal resources, your time, your money, your energy, your possessions, your values, what you place value on, your sense of self-worth. So there can be this sense of really wanting to go for it here with Mars and Gemini. And, just make sure that you're not trying to bite off more than you could chew. Like I said, there's not too many fingers and too many pies, and that can make you feel a little bit scattered. That can scatter your energy, which is not really, something that Taurus, I think, loves feeling. And so, just be mindful to kind of not bite off more than you could chew in those areas, like I said. But it is a really good time to like maybe tackle, well, it's tax season, right? So if you've been putting that off, now's a good time to take care of that business, to actively do something about it, or to actively do something about your using the skills and talents that you possess to sustain yourself, to get your needs met, that sort of thing, right? To actively, to take some kind of action revolving around your values as well. Maybe even take some action, so maybe you're raising your prices, you're in business for yourself, you're going to raise your prices with Mars moving through the second house for you, and you're going to be kind of take action on that and be assertive about it. So, excuse me. All right, that's for you, Taurus. And this, there's some other examples anyways, but listen to the questions and filter that through your current situation and life experience, where things are at for you. All right, moving on to Aries. So Aries, for you, Mars is moving through your third house over this next kind of 7 weeks, right? Until April 23rd, I think I said, right? And Mars moving through your third house is firing up this area of the chart that has to do with your immediate environment and the people in it, things in your general sphere, communication related things. This is the natural house of Gemini. And so Mars moving through here is like, this can quite literally be more assertive or aggressive communications, coming in and out, back and forth. This can have to do with more activity in general in relation to, like sort of short jaunts, like moving around. I get this sense of a lot of like activity, moving around, a lot of interaction between, people. Like this can be peers, siblings, cousins, neighbors, teammates, just people in your friends that feel like siblings, this kind of thing. Those sorts of people. This can be taking a lot of action in terms of commerce and of marketing. So firing up your marketing game, if that's something that's relevant to you. Those kinds of things. So what else can I say? So just watch for heated conversations, and heated communications. Just be mindful of that, Aries. But Mars is your ruler, so you're comfortable with Mars energy, right? And you can use that as Mars moves through this third house, because wherever Mars goes, you kind of are drawn, and you bring that Aries energy to it, right? And so just be mindful that it's not a little bit too, communications are not too assertive and aggressive and that kind of thing. but it is really good for taking action on certain things, like I was saying, commerce, marketing, acting on communications that maybe you've been putting off, that sort of thing. All right, so we're going to move on to Pisces now. Pisces, for you, you have this happening in your fourth house. So Mars is going to be moving through your fourth house for the next 6-7 weeks. And this is charging up that area of the chart that has to do with home, family, place of living, real estate, your sense of emotional security, parents. Oftentimes it's like the more kind of nurturing figures, but it can be just parents in general, those sorts of things. And so there can be a lot of, with Mars moving through the fourth house, there can be a lot of activity on the home front, plain and simple, just a lot of things going on all at once. And that could be like, of your own accord, like you're renovating, or you're moving things around, or you're doing something in your home or on your home. You're buying a new home, you're selling a home, these kinds of things, right? There's a lot of action around that. Or it could be, it could also have to do with just plain old activity, like maybe kids are home from school again and there's online learning going on again, or something like that. So that increases the activity on the home front, just busy. Watch for aggression in the home, kind of thing. Just getting short-tempered with people, maybe when everybody's all under one roof for so long. But generally using this energy for getting stuff done, right, around the home or in relation to home. It could be, again, fourth house has to do with our sense of emotional security and safety. So there can be some Martian energy brought to that, and being like a little bit fired up about that, or I see this as one of those things where the anger could come out as a mask for maybe some other deeper things that are going on potentially. So those are some things that I can think of that come to mind when I think about Mars moving through the fourth house. And then of course, Pisces, you're going to have Mercury moving through your sign as well, right? As I mentioned, starting on the 15th. And so the Mars energy in Gemini is going to be squaring your sign. And so there can be a little bit of tension there. But just be mindful. It's good energy, like I said, for getting things done. Listen to the introduction if you have not done that yet, because it will give you the bigger context, and reflect on those questions that I offered up there. So moving on to Aquarius. Aquarius, for you, this is happening in your fifth house. So all this fiery Mars energy is being brought to the area of your chart that has to do with your creative self-expression, how you shine out in the world, your sense of joy, what brings you joy and happiness, the things you like to do because they make you happy and joyful. It has to do with children and anything revolving around children, including fertility and pregnancy and those kinds of things. But anything revolving around children is fifth house as well. Fifth house is also related to things like risk taking, right? Like gambling, that sort of thing. So those are all fifth house themes. And so with Mars moving through there, any number of those things can be fired up in some way. So there can be like maybe butting heads with your kids going on during this time. There can be a lot of activity in relation to things involving children. For example, like here where I live, we've had a spike in COVID cases again, and this is impacting schools. And so there's a lot of information going on about that, and people are wondering, are decisions going to be made? Are kids going to be, and some kids already are in certain schools, have to be home for a period of time again. And so, this can bring up a lot of activity around things involving kids, but sometimes, some anger, some frustration, and that sort of thing as well, right? can be going on with this in your 5th house, Aquarius. And it could, but it could also equally be, if kids are not a factor for you in any way, it can be getting fired up about, some kind of creative project or some kind of hobby, of really, getting your hands in there and really doing something about it. Sports is 5th house as well. So there can be some kind of sporting associated thing, right? Like you could be taking up more, like a more Mars-like sport, something that's more active or aggressive even. So those are a number of things. You could be bringing that notion of anger into creativity. We talked about that in the intro, where this can be a really good time to explore how you can use your anger creatively, right? So, okay, so that's for you, Aquarius, and we're going to move on to Capricorn now. So Capricorn, for you, Mars is moving through your 6th house until April 23rd. And so this is really can be a lot of activity in general in terms of your daily routine. Just so the 6th house speaks to the daily grind, right? In terms of all the things we do on the day-to-day, the work that we do. It can be paid, it can be unpaid, but it's work related oftentimes, and service related. It also very much speaks to issues around health and illness and that sort of thing. Pets are also a factor here, so there could be a lot of activity going on in terms of pets. But or there could be like a lot of appointments, a lot of medical appointments or something like that. A lot of activity as far as that goes. There can be a real drive to take on a lot, is in terms of the workload. So be mindful of that, but there's an opportunity to really get some things done, take some action and get some things done, in those life areas, those 6th house life areas. There can be some, particularly over this week, some, innovative thinking that goes on in relation to that, to those 6th house themes as well. And then maybe when Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, right, where Mars is right now, moves into Pisces on the 15th, then that could be maybe the communications. Like, let's say, for example, you've got some medical stuff going on. So it could be like the communications maybe get a little bit more fuzzy there, or not so clear, or there can be this kind of trying to work through, what you should do and what feels right, or this is what the doctor said, but this is what my gut tells me, and that kind of thing can be going on as well. And that can be in relation to your work life as well, or like I said, pets, as well as 6th house. Okay, so we're going to move to Sagittarius now. Sagittarius, for you, this is going on in your 7th house. So Mars is moving through your 7th house of one-to-one relationships from now, starting tonight, right, the 3rd of March until April 23rd. And so this is firing up your relationship sector. And this can bring a lot of activity in terms of close personal relationships. And when I say that, I mean like significant others, close friends, family members, business partners, that sort of thing, rivals. There can be some real competition going on here with Mars in the 7th house. It can have to do with contracts and agreements, so a lot of activity going on potentially in relation to that kind of thing. It could be anger in relationships, working through some anger issues in relationships, learning to be more assertive in relationship with Mars there, having the drive to do that, being driven to kind of take action in some way, shape, or form in terms of relationship, or contract, like I said, contract and agreement. that's pretty cut and dry. And like, while Mercury is in Aquarius over the next week or so, there's an opportunity to think about things innovatively, um, and that sort of thing. And then as Mercury moves into Pisces, there can be a little bit more of a, like I had said in the intro, this trying to balance the head and the heart, so to speak, or the more rational mind with the intuitive, right, as well. So, okay, I think that, like, this can be, I'm just trying to think of some real world examples. I gave you a couple of things there, but oh my gosh, it could be like planning a wedding, a lot of activity around planning a wedding in the 7th house. It could be again, competition, right? Direct competition with somebody in some way, shape, or form, with a rival in some sense. A lot of activity around contracts and agreements, if something like that is relevant for you in your particular life. So yeah, I think that gives you sort of enough to go on. Sagittarius, definitely listen to the intro and listen to the questions that I offered. All right, so kind of losing my voice here. We're moving on to Scorpio now. So, excuse me, said I was going to make a shorter video, right? We're not really. Maybe a little shorter, but than they have been. Anyway, Scorpio, for you, this is moving through your 8th house. Mars is in the 8th house for the next, it's about 7 weeks or so, until April 23rd. So this is a time of action, drive, assertion, ideally, right? Ideally not aggression, in relation to 8th house themes, which have to do with other people's money. So other people's time, money, energy as well, but other people's money meaning like your partner's money, money that comes to you through clients, money that comes to you through, taxes and wills and that kind of thing, or money that goes out in those ways, taxes, wills, insurance, debt, mortgage, all of those things, right? 8th house also speaks to your deep psychological kind of issues, right? Wounding and healing. The skeletons in the closet, I often say, in terms of 8th house. But also, and can also very much have to do with issues around mortality, and that cycle of death and rebirth, right? Not necessarily literally, though, that idea of transformation. So, okay, so for you, Scorpio, Mars is bringing this drive and this passion and this will, and this assertion to these areas of life. So what could this look like? This is a good time to to take care of business in terms of your taxes, let's say, for example. This may be a time when there's a lot of activity going on in terms of maybe settling an estate. There could be a lot going on in terms of dealing with some, issues that have to do with like the deep psyche, therapy, that sort of thing. There can be, you can be fired up or angry about things like, about anything surrounding resources that you're not necessarily like ultimately in control of, because that's more 2nd house across the sky, right, from the 8th house. You may need to assert yourself more around those things. So those are some things that I can think of to offer you up in terms of real world examples. There are many more, and you will know when we're thinking about your own life and your own situation, how that may be playing out for you, and keeping in mind all the things I said in the introduction, right? And the questions that I posed there. So that's where I'm going to leave it for you, Scorpio, and I'm going to move on to Libra. Libra, for you, Mars is firing up your 9th house over these next 7 weeks or so. And so there's a lot of activity potential activity going on, a lot of will, drive, passion, assertiveness, happening in relation to ninth house themes, which have to do with a few different things. So things like teaching, learning, publishing, getting your message out there. Oftentimes when we're talking about teaching and learning, when it's ninth house related, it's more of like the higher minded variety, meaning more things like college, university, postgraduate, or anything that you're learning that is not sort of like, that's beyond the basics, or it could have to do with as I said, publishing, those sorts of things. But it could also have to do with travel, usually of the long distance variety, or trips that you take on a less frequent basis. It can have to do with, very much have to do with your mindset, your philosophy, your belief system, your worldview, this kind of thing. And so Mars is firing up that area of life for you. And so this could be like making plans for travel when it's allowed. This can be really kind of getting up on your soapbox and giving people a piece of your mind, in a more public way. This can be some kind of action or activity going on around teaching and learning, and publishing and all of those kinds of things as well. A lot of activity. Maybe you're getting ready to publish, I don't know, a book or a course or something like that. Maybe there's aggression in, if you work in an institution like a university or something like that, there can be a lot of, it's going to be a time where there's a lot going on there. Can be some aggression going on, but there can just be a lot of activity going on as well. Or there can be like a deep, like a real drive to learn something. To maybe you're signing up for a new program and you're really diving in with both feet there and getting a lot done in terms of that, learning something new sort of thing. And it can require a lot of action on your part, right? So, and keeping in mind, like I said, the Mercury piece, right, and where Mercury's at, like I talked about all that in the introduction, so please listen to that and listen to the questions that I posed to give you a little bit more sense of, how you can work with this energy productively. So that's for you, Libra. Next, we're moving on to Virgo. Virgo, for you, this Mars energy is firing up your 10th house, right? So very public house. The house that deals with things around career matters, around your public reputation and public life, around the legacy you wish to leave, around your relationship to authority figures and your own authority. These are all 10th house themes. And so, you can be feeling quite fired up in these areas over the next 6 or 7 weeks and taking a lot of action there. There can be like maybe actively seeking, career advancements, or there could be things like actively putting yourself out there more publicly, and maybe in a more assertive way as well with Mars there, right? There can be, let me think here. You are asserting yourself in the workplace more. Hopefully not, there's more sort of aggression and butting heads going on in those areas of life, but it's a possibility as well. And there can be, as when Mercury moves into Pisces, like I said in the intro, on the 15th, this can add a layer of a bit of confusion there, but where you're really being asked to kind of look at both the rational and the intuitive intelligence, and work in that way, right? Through the 10th house themes that we're talking about here. And in relation to where Pisces sits for you, so which we spoke about, I believe, last week. So those are the themes that are really being fired up, though. Those that career, public life kind of thing is really where your attention, or where the Mars energy is flowing over these next 7 weeks. So use the questions that I posed to help direct you as far as that goes, and see if you can't really make some progress, and try not to spread yourself too thin, right, with Mars and Gemini, and have too many fingers and too many pies, so that you don't really get anything concrete done. All right, so I'm going to leave that there for you, Virgo, and I'm going to move on to Leo, where Mars is moving through your 11th house. So for you, Leo, this has to do with a lot of activity, maybe some assertiveness, a lot of action being taken, a lot of passion and drive, in terms of the group. So this can be like friendship groups, or any sort of larger group that you're connected to. This can be the internet. So there's a lot, maybe there's a lot of, networking going on in terms of technology and the internet, and that sort of thing. There can be like some kind of project involving the greater good, or a larger group of people, or some kind of humanitarian effort even, or even involving your friends, that there's a lot of activity around. This can be you asserting yourself more in relation to your friendship groups, or any kind of like larger network, like I said. 11th house speaks to your hopes and dreams for the future, and the people that can help you reach them, right? And so there can be a lot of drive and energy centered around those your vision for the future as well. So that's really nice. Just try to not scatter yourself here. Try to not take on too much, and check the, if you have a tendency towards being a little too assertive, like, bordering on aggressive, just be mindful of that with Mars moving through there. And definitely consider both, particularly when Mercury moves into Pisces mid-March, or on the 15th. Consider both the sort of rational and the intuitive, right? When you're working through whatever these 11th house things are that are going on for you. And of course, you know yourself and your own life best, right? So you'll know. So use those questions that I posed to help you kind of focus this a little bit better. And good luck with whatever's going on, Leo, in that area of life. Now we're going to move on to, last but not least in this case, to Cancer. So Cancer, for you, you have Mars moving through your 12th house over the next, sort of 7 weeks. And so this can be like, so the 12th house, right? Let's first talk about, what does the 12th house signify? It signifies things like your solitude, how you spend time alone. It's what goes on behind the scenes, and under the surface, in the unconscious even world, or the dream world, or the unseen, spirit world kind of thing even. It is your spiritual health, and oftentimes mental health. I see it. It can also be, 12th house is also, it's the last house. It's endings. It can be endings and losses and that sort of thing as well. And it can be our self-sabotaging behaviors as well, and habits in the 12th house that we're charged with kind of facing and dealing with. And in a practical sense, it can be places that are what we would call places of confinement, or what they would call that in sort of traditional terms. So things like hospitals and spiritual retreat centers, hospices, rehab facilities, prisons, anything like that, detention centers, anything like that. And so taking all those themes, filtering it through your own life experience and what's going on for you right now, there can be a lot of activity going on behind closed doors in relation to any of those things that I just talked about. There can be a lot of willpower being asserted, a lot of drive and passion. There can be, maybe you're having violent dreams. Like, that's just one thing that popped into my head with Mars in the 12th house. Or it could be taking on, so like a spiritual practice that's a little bit more fired up, like Kundalini yoga or something like that. Or, putting some real action into your spiritual practice. It can be learning to, maybe if you work in one of those facilities that I just mentioned, there can be some things going on, a lot of activity going on in that arena, or, you know, maybe some real, you're learning to assert yourself more there, or there can be some butting heads going on, or that kind of thing as well, right, in relation to those things and those themes. So, you know, be gentle with yourself there. This can, one way I can see this being, you know, playing out positively is like active rest, you know, intentionally taking a break, sort of thing. I can see that being a thing as well. Or maybe you're just like, you know, while you're taking a break and you're trying to get some downtime and relaxing, this can be something as simple as like the media you're consuming, like you're watching movies or reading books, or something that center around themes of anger and aggression, or just are a little bit more, you know, racy or Mars like kind of thing. You know, you're watching, you're binge watching, you know, Vikings or something like that. So, okay, those are all the options I have. But definitely filter through the questions that I posed and, you know, the introduction for context. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. That's all 12 signs. I hope this was a little bit more focused for you than last week. You know, I was, as I said, a little all over the map, and I'm glad I remembered the questions, and I hope you find those helpful. Please like, subscribe, comment, share what's going on, you know, if you're willing to, in the comments, and just let me know how things are feeling for you, and if you're experiencing this, or if this is resonating with you in any way. I'd love to know. Okay, take good care, and I will talk to you next week. Bye for now.